Sarah's going to come and read our passage from Luke 17, verses 11 to 19.
Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus travelled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well."
Thanks, Sarah. Today, to do what Jesus did, we would use this. This is multi-drug treatment. This is the combination of antibiotics that people diagnosed with leprosy are given to cure them. This particular one is for children. They get 6 tablets on day 1, and then they're told on the back how to take them. If their leprosy is diagnosed quickly, 6 of these will cure them. If it's further on, it could take up to 12. But we've only had multi-drug treatment for just over 30 years. So Jesus definitely did not have multi-drug treatment to cure the 10 men with leprosy. It was definitely a miracle, and that really did happen. Luke is an amazing storyteller. His gospel is written to Dear Theophilus, which means lover of God. Theophilus could have been a real person, or just as easily, the book could have been written to you and me as lovers of God. I love that Luke gives us more than just a historical plot, more than philosophy and doctrine. He gives us characters with whom we can identify. Luke gives a rational account of the events on which our Christian faith is based. He tells us in such a way that demands a personal engagement with Jesus, not just a nod to a belief system or obedience to a religious ritual. Luke's characters touch our heartstrings and not just our intellect. He places events in real time and focuses story on the impact Jesus had on real people. Luke doesn't shy away from the fact that the gospel arrives in a time of injustice, a time of war in occupied territories, or the fact that it disrupted existing political and religious hierarchies. It came at a time a lot like ours, actually. It is genuinely good news for real people, people who are faithful and good, but also people who are broken-hearted, whose hopes have been dashed, who live under a shadow because society casts a question mark over their heads, because society excludes them. And that's as true today as it was then. This good news will affect everything: political, religious, community, and family. The Gospel of Luke is not just conceptual, it's right here, right now, and it's thoroughly personal. Our passage this morning is one of many referring to the disease of leprosy. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all include several accounts of Jesus healing people affected by leprosy. And from that, we in the Leprosy Mission conclude that Jesus had a special concern, a real care and compassion for people affected by leprosy. There's a passage that's given in Luke 7 and Matthew 11, where John the Baptist sends 2 of his followers to ask Jesus, is he the Messiah? When the men came to Jesus, they said, John the Baptist sent us to you to ask, are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else? At that very time, Jesus cured many who had diseases, sicknesses, and evil spirits, and gave sight to many who were blind. So he replied to the messengers, "Go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." So when John the Baptist is asking if Jesus was the person he was expecting, if Jesus was the Messiah, the evidence that Jesus gave back to him was his healing miracles, and in particular mentioned leprosy. Jesus announced the coming of God's kingdom through healing, through acceptance of people who were excluded from society. Another story is given in Matthew 8, Mark 1, and Luke 5. And again, you can assume that 3 of the 4 gospel writers are giving the same story. It was important to them because it was important to Jesus. While Jesus was wandering through the towns, a man with leprosy came to him. And when he saw Jesus, he fell face down and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." And Jesus reached out his hand, moved by compassion, and touched the man. "Be clean," and immediately his leprosy left him. Perhaps one of the reasons that this story is in all 3 Gospels was the importance of the touch of Jesus. When Jesus touched a man with leprosy, he became, in the eyes of the Jews, ritually unclean. He would be unable to go into the synagogue. He would be as but felt to be bad, as unacceptable as the man affected by leprosy. Leprosy was a feared disease then, and it's a feared disease now. And leprosy has many connotations. There is a spiritual element to it. The Jews and the early Christians believed that leprosy was a punishment from God for the sin of blasphemy. The Hindus today believe that leprosy is a punishment for a sin caused in a previous life. The Muslims believe that it's a punishment from Allah for something they've done wrong, when in reality, of course, we know that it is a disease that is easily cured by a few wee tablets. And in the Bible times, as I said the last time I spoke, we have come so far in 2,000 years. We have achieved so much. And in some respects, we have come nowhere at all. The reason we think that leprosy is so important to Jesus and mentioned so often is the stigmatization of the people, is the rejection of the people. They had to leave. We've seen images of men with bells, unclean, unclean. It is believed, for example, that the Gorbals in Glasgow gets its name when it was a leprosy colony a few hundred years back, and all of Glasgow at that time was on the North Shore. And the food, etc., was rowed across the Clyde from the north side to what is now the Gorbals. And if they needed something, they rang the bell, and it was called the Gory Bell, and the Gory Bell became the Gorbals, so I believe. And so it's people who were stigmatized, people who were excluded from the synagogue. And why was that important? The synagogue was where they met with God. So people were excluding people affected by leprosy from meeting with God from the synagogue. And when Jesus touched them, he aligned himself with them. He stood with them. He became one of them. And he also cured them. How often do we exclude people in our society? I have been involved in a few occasions with this has been recorded, so I better watch what I say, with the Red Top Press. Have been accused of being part of the cancer culture when I have stood up and advocated for people affected by leprosy, and the derogatory way that they are described in the use of what we call the L word, the word leper that we don't accept now. And it's still, that's why I mean we've come so far and we've come nowhere at all. And there's an understanding that people are different, that people are excluded, that people are other, is one way of putting it. Who is other to us? All you need to do is walk through Glasgow city centre and you will see people who are other to us. The homeless, those with addictions, those with disabilities, those who seem different. You know, people are now starting to wear lanyards round their neck saying things like, "My disability is not seen." How awful is that? That they actually have to say it to get accepted and to get understanding. In a society where we have endless amounts of technology and medicines, etc., to make a difference. So consider who you treat differently. Consider how some people would feel if they were coming into this church, into this building. Would they feel different on a Sunday as they feel on a Thursday, where they come in and they get food and they get acceptance and they get love? What can we do on a Sunday to transfer the feelings from a Thursday? But back to the passage. Luke places today's passage in what some refer to as his journey to Jerusalem. Jesus heals as he continues to journey to Jerusalem, where he knows he will be executed. And he's travelling between Samaria and Galilee, moving east to west as his journey of destiny continues. That he would meet a Samaritan in this setting is not surprising. And on the face of it, this passage appears to be a simple healing miracle. But is it? The healing itself does not appear to be as important as people's reaction to it. Mostly when we hear the story, the 9 are portrayed as ungrateful. But let's look a wee bit differently at them. They all approached him and called out to him, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." They all obeyed his command to go to the priest and show themselves. So as we see them disappearing in our mind, let's give them a little more credit. After all, they're doing what Jesus told them to do. They're heading in the direction he told them to go. They're heading for the priest. And remember, this was before they had any evidence of their healing. So let's give them credit for knowing to whom to call out to for healing, for believing Jesus when he said it was done, even before they saw the evidence, for doing what he told them to do. He didn't say, "Go and show yourselves to the priest, and by the way, when you see yourself healed, come back to me with a thank you note." Didn't do any of that. The purpose of visiting the priest after cure, which is given to us in Luke 5, Leviticus 13 and 14, was so that the cured person could be received back into society. And there are still some societies where my colleagues give people a certificate saying they're cured of leprosy to allow them back into their villages. And the 9, presumably all Jewish, had their minds set on the future, on resuming the life they'd left behind with the onset of the illness. Their minds were full of scenes of reunions with their wives, their children, being allowed back into the market, back into the synagogue, being able to go back to work, to being able to attend marriages and different family celebrations, the different times through the year that the Jews marked the rituals. They were all very normal and very everyday concerns that we can identify with. How often do we do as Jesus told us to, but we miss something? We're not quite 100% there. And it's important to note that the Samaritan, the foreigner, the excluded one, who returned to thank God, He was made well. And this is an occasion where the use of English kind of does us a misunderstanding. He was made well, and the made well, the verb is sozo, whereas the noun were merely cleansed or healed, and the word is therazo. Physical cure, therizo, the verb used twice, made clean in verse 14 and healed in 15, is not the same as the Samaritan made you well or made you whole, a condition often referred to as salvation. When Jesus says to the Samaritan, your faith has made you well, sozo is the verb he uses. And in Luke's context, he's making an uncompromising point. Only the Samaritan is grateful for the grace he received. The others think solely of the benefits that they received. How does Jesus' emphasis on gratitude impact our church and our life? How often have you done something for someone and thought, they might have said thank you? Why is gratitude crucial to wholeness of mind, body, and spirit, to what the New Testament calls salvation? It seems to be more than proving that we have good manners, that our parents taught us to write thank you notes. Note Jesus' words in verse 18, was no one found to return and give thanks to God except this foreigner. Why is gratitude to God so crucial to wholeness of body, mind, and spirit, to what the New Testament calls salvation? Apparently, for our well-being, we must add thanksgiving to our faith. The person with an attitude of gratitude experiences salvation that goes beyond merely physical cure. It is a realigning of our inner life, our well-being. It is finding the true meaning of shalom. And this raises a few questions for me. Is our impulse to thank others related to our impulse to thank God? Kirsten was thanking God for God's protection over the Watsons, for example. How often do we come to God in prayer? Take the outcome of the prayer and not go back and say thank you. How often, when we thank others, do we do it in a way that they appreciate? Some people really appreciate a thank you card. Others are totally embarrassed by it and think, all right, recycling bin. Other people put it up on a shelf or a mantelpiece or stick it to their fridge. Some people prefer a text or a WhatsApp. It's really important when we're thanking a person that we know that person and know how to thank that person in a way that they would appreciate. And it's the same with God. We need to come back to God to thank him in a way that he expects us to. So what does gratitude contribute to being made well in body, mind, and soul? And why is it so important that Jesus would chastise those who didn't value it? I would suggest that gratitude keeps us connected to the giver of the gift. Recognizing God as the source of the gift keeps us using it aligned with his character and his values. Gratitude keeps us grounded in the value of the gift as we take it into our everyday lives. All good gifts come from God. An attitude of gratitude keeps us focused on the source of life, of love, and each new day. When we acknowledge the source of love, we're much more likely to share it with other people. And that is why gratitude is important enough for Jesus to lack its lament. So to finish up, I want to finish in a practical way because I am a practical person. How many of you journal? Hands up. A few. Yes, I'm with Anne. I have a Marmite relationship with journaling. But as a coach, I would encourage people to journal. I encourage my staff and others as I mentor them to journal. And as I said the last time, there's something the way we're wired about writing getting into our brain. Of those who journal, who does a gratitude journal? Yes, well done. That's something that we should be in the habit of, is just listing what we're grateful for. And you can do it in any way. You could have a proper journal. I have one here, and I hate to tell you the last time I used it, but this is for professional times, and this asks, what happened in the past day? What were your biggest wins? What lesson did you learn? What are you grateful for right now? How am I feeling right now? Etc., etc. I need to get back to that. Amazon is full. You could have them with less boring covers than that. And if you don't want to invest in a journal, you could actually just buy a notebook, and I suggest you buy a nice notebook with a nice cover. Not boring, something that you'll enjoy using that has nice paper. And get a pen that you like using. I was wondering this morning if I might go back to a fountain pen of my childhood, just for something a wee bit different. This I was in the habit of doing for a year, the Celtic Wheel of the Year. And it's evening every day for 365 days is Thanksgiving in the evening. As I end this day in your safekeeping, I count 3 blessings before my sleeping. Now, it's important to note that we're ending our day in God's safekeeping. But sometimes the thinking of the 3 things I was giving thanks for was easy. Wonderful day, wonderful answers to prayer. You could reel off the 3 things. No problem at all. A more mundane day where just things happened. There was nothing bad about it. There was nothing special about it. It's sometimes harder to come up with 3 things. The discipline of doing that is really amazing. And I've decided I really need to get back to it. But also on a bad day, it's really difficult when things haven't gone your way, when something's gone really badly wrong. It's hard to come up with 3 things. And in those times, the 3 things I came up with was things like I could drink the water out my tap. I was lying in a cosy, comfortable bed in a safe and secure flat. I have an amazing park 5 minutes walk from where I am, where I can experience the beauty of creation. God's amazing gift to us. You give thanks for, it may not appear at the present moment, but we do have a democracy. We have an NHS to be grateful for. We have an education system to be grateful for. Last night or yesterday, Ros and I were giving thanks for the rain, so I didn't need to water my garden. There is always something, especially for us in this society, that we could give thanks for. Food in the fridge, in the freezer, in the cupboard. Money in a pocket, a wallet, the bank, a credit card, several credit cards. There is always something, no matter what situation you are in, there is always something to give thanks for. And it's a really good discipline to find that and to actually practice it. And I would really strongly recommend that you journal for those who don't. As I said, I have a bit of a do and a don't. I tend to use it when life's either challenging or exciting. I struggle when life's just tripping along nicely. And that's the same for giving thanks. So God expects us to give thanks. Jesus healed 10 people. He treated them all the same. But he gave the Samaritan who said thank you salvation. He got something a wee bit better, a wee bit more, because he said thank you to God. Thank you.